we always start out with grades. We had a tough loss to Seattle, interdivisional game. Burns a little bit more that we have to say we lost to Seattle, right?
Yes, it does.
So let's get into it and see how we graded it. And I wanted to start with, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I feel like maybe setting up these grades with a little statement could be helpful on my side of it, just because of the simple fact that the 49ers should have won this game. Like going into this grade session, the 49ers absolutely should have won this game. And for everyone listening and watching, here are some statistics to set it up. You good with this, Sunil? I'm going to throw out some stats that help us decide on some grades. Total yards, 49ers, 457. Seahawks, 234. And the 49ers lost.
Wow.
Passing yards, San Francisco, 314. Seattle, 129.
Yikes.
And the 49ers lost. Rushing yards, 49ers, 143. Seahawks, 105. And the 49ers lost. It is just mind-boggling to me, the statistical domination that occurred on the field, and yet that was not the way in which the game played out. I just wanted to throw that out there because it was bugging the hell out of me after watching the game on Sunday, but that sets us up for our grade segment.
Beautiful. So let's start with those air yards that were mostly given to the wide receivers. And talk to me. I mean, you just put it out, and I didn't really know those numbers, Rob, so I'm glad that you threw those out there. Obviously, the 49ers offense dominated the Seahawks offense as far as just total performance, as far as just on paper, right? But obviously, the scoreboard is the only number that really matters, and Seahawks had more points at the end of the day than we did. So
yes, they did.
Specifically with the wide receivers, and once again, another week where we're talking wide receivers, we're talking Debo, and that's about it. But how did you grade this wide receiver core, seeing the type of numbers that were being thrown up there?
Yeah, to me, this was a tale of two cities type of a thing, where you had Debo and then you had everyone else. Mm-hmm. And so Debo gets an A+. Debo earned an A+. Everyone else, much more average pedestrian numbers. And so to me, that had to average out. If you have the vast majority of the receiving core getting in a C+ performance, you have one member of the receiving core racking up that A+ performance where he just dominated the game again. And I mean, so frustrating to watch him excel and not have that turn into wins for the 49ers. I mean, he's clearly feeling himself. I don't know if you saw his Instagram post.
Yeah.
Like, he's just clearly riding high at this point.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel? See, I don't know, because the team's losing.
Ooh, that's an interesting point.
So, like, what are we trying to do? Like, and I saw that, and to be honest, like, I'm all about, hey, it's a job. Whatever you do after the job, you just, like, whatever, you know, at my job, I could crush it. We could be doing well, not doing well. I'm an employee at a corporate company, whatever. I'm going to go home and have fun doing whatever I want. So I understand if Debo's looking that on the field is my job, off the field is me building my brand, because football isn't guaranteed. So I got to make sure that I build my brand so I have a career outside of football.
He does.
So I get that. But the 49ers do not look good right now. And to see your star out there kind of looking like nonchalant, like it doesn't matter that we just lost to the Seahawks, and just like, hey, I had a good game. I don't know what do you think about that kind of mentality, and whether or not that's a winning type of mentality?
That's a very interesting take on it. And I think in general, I agree with that premise. I agree with the premise that the team success is more important than the individual success. So let's start there. Let's agree on that point. And then I think I have to disagree on the idea of Debo has been playing to such a level that I think he should be out there celebrating that. I think so long as on the field, he's not causing any distractions, he's not doing anything sort of Odell Beckham-ish where you feel as if he's detracting from the team. He's clearly laying it all out on the field. I mean, like a dog. He's going after balls. He's running over fools. I think he has earned a little bit of braggadocio, even though the last 2 games haven't gone the way that the 49ers would want them to. But I could understand the other side of it. Do you see it the other way?
I'm all about, I understand the business side of things. So for me, I'm more looking at it like he's trying to build his brand. Look, the average career in the NFL is 3 years. So build your brand. Like, I wasn't even mad at Juju dancing on, dancing for the Pittsburgh Steelers last season and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I just think that's what receivers do. That's how they build their brand. But it does irk me a little. I can't say that it hasn't crossed my mind, which is why I brought it up, that, bruh, it looks like this team might not even make the playoffs, and you're out here looking like everything is good. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. That should bother him. Where the 49ers are should bother him.
Yeah.
All right, so taking it back to the grades, as I was saying before I got sidetracked on the Debo thing, which is all relevant to the conversation because it is the one person shining and everyone else just mired in obscurity. That's what's happening on the field. That's what Debo has done in polarizing this room as far as production goes between him and everyone else. So to me, that A+ rounded in with all the other C average grades, I had to give him a solid B for the wide receivers. I mean, you saw what we put up through the air. It was nothing to sneeze at. It was a decent day, but a lot of those yards came in garbage time. They came on one throw. So for me, it was a decent performance brought up by Debo's stellar performance, but not great.
Yeah, and I think so in grading the wide receivers, the only way you could drop them, I guess, as far as grades, is if they're not doing their job to get open, if they're not getting separation, things like that. Because at the end of the day, whomever's throwing them the ball really controls how much success they could have overall. So I think based off of what the quarterback play was, I think a B is a solid grade that you can give them. They did get a lot of yards. A lot of those yards were that they earned, right? It wasn't because the passes were that far down the field. It was because yak yards, busted coverages, things like that. So I do agree with the B. But overall, outside of just the grade and the performance, I'm still very, very worried about the fact that this is just Debo and the gang. Like, Ayuk still hasn't had a breakout game. Trent Sherfield still hasn't had a breakout game. These guys have gotten touchdowns here and there, but it's not like that consistent. I don't know. I mean, I guess it still hasn't been stopped, so keep going with it. But it seems to me that eventually just Debo could be something that could be stopped down the line.
Yeah, I would agree that teams could probably scheme against that. And I think you raise a good question that we'll probably touch on when we get to that section of the grades. But you can only do so much depending on who is throwing the ball to those receivers. You were saying that all they can do is get open. They can't throw themselves the ball. I tend to agree with that.
Yeah. Or maybe they can. I mean, the running backs are starting to be quarterbacks.
Maybe they need to.
Yeah. So let's move on. Still pass catching, but also throwing in the blocking in there. That's why I kind of separated them. So let's go with the tight ends. And we did see a Ross Dwelley sighting. So Grant Cohn definitely popped the bottle of Dom Perignon when that happened. So talk to us a little bit about how you saw the tight ends and what those grades ended up being for you.
Yeah. Great catch by Dwelley. I mean, he really is a fantastic athlete. It is perplexing on many levels why we don't get him involved in the pass game more frequently. You hear it from a large percentage of the beat writers. It is not just Grant that sing the praises of Ross Dwelley. It is a large percentage of them that once a highlight reel catch like this comes up, they all are forthcoming with these tales of, oh yeah, well, we see him do that in practices all the time. And so it is a bit perplexing that we can't work him in more, especially with the 49ers expressing that desire to bring in a second pass-catching tight end. You remember all of the laundry list of players that we flirted with to bring in to be that number 2 pass-catching tight end. And it would seem that we have Dwelley right here and choose not to use him with any frequency. Kittle seemed to struggle for the day, right? 10 targets, but only 4 catches for 40 yards. And quite honestly, we're lucky that he's still with us after that.
The way that knee bent, oh my goodness.
My God. I truth be told, I don't like watching injuries. When injuries occur and they do those slow motion replays 10 times over of a horrific injury, I choose to look away because I just don't want to see that. I don't need my brain covered in nasty, bones breaking nonsense.
Oh, man, that could have been a lot worse.
Yeah. And so I didn't rewatch it because I feared that it was serious. Once I learned that it wasn't something that took him out of the game, I then did see the replay, and it's just staggering to think that nothing was shredded there.
Good. Thank God for his yoga, right?
Yes, indeed. Knock on wood. Thank God for yoga. Whatever it is, whatever the reason is, we got something to be grateful there. And so, it was a decent day again. I thought that the Dwelly catch brought him up as the star of the show there with the one TD reception. I thought it was a very middling day for George Kittle, but the run blocking was definitely sound, and we'll touch on that when we get into the running backs. But for me, it was another pretty decent performance by pass catchers. I go with a B- on the tight ends here.
Yeah. I like B-. I think I'm going to give them a C+. And the reason for that is this was a game where I think the George Kittle should have dominated. Yes. I think this was a game that he needed to take over. And I mean, it goes back to kind of what we said about, they could only do so much, but 10 pass attempts to him is a lot. And for him to not have a massive game out of that, I think does bring the grades down a little bit for me, even though obviously the blocking and all that kind of stuff is really important to the team. I think I'm going to go with the C+, still a passing grade because of all that Kittle does. And obviously the touchdown from the boss, but the boss, Ross the boss. So C+ for me, but I'm still a little disappointed in the performance because I really think that in my mind, I thought that George Kittle, this was going to be his breakout game that, really set the team on fire and gave them the momentum to move forward kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a very suspect Seattle defense coming into the game. They didn't look suspect against the 49ers. I sort of thought that might be the case, unfortunately, but I agree. It's set up to be a get-right game for the 49ers offense and should have been an opportunity for Kittle.
Yep. So we both gave them B-, C+. Not terrible, but not the greats, right?
Yep.
So, but you did touch on the running game. So let's go over that running game and specifically the running back core. How did you feel about what they did in their performance against Seattle?
Yeah, I actually thought this group looked to be the best out of the bunch for the offense. A good day for Sermon, 19 carries for 89 yards, averaging 4.7 yards per carry. I did have to deduct some. I was leaning towards a B+ grade for this group because I did think that it was the best group within the offense. Obviously reliant upon the line, the tight ends, the wide receivers for run blocking. But as far as the performance of this group, thought it to be near the top. Had to deduct a plus from that grade, taking it down to a B because of that Jaquez Patrick throw over to Jimmy G that then took that play off kilter. It looked as if that would have been the deep shot to Kittle that would have been completed had that pass from Jaquez been on target. It was not. However, let me also point out that I do not blame Mr. Patrick for that. I blame whoever chose to have Mr. Patrick, a third string running back.
We know who chose.
Like, why? Who called that play? Like, what do you
know who called it?
Yeah, we know damn well who called it.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean,
very frustrating.
This guy doesn't know any of the playbook. Right? He's just coming in. Hey, why don't we do a trick play?
Hey, listen, here's what we're going to do. When's the last time you threw a pass? High school? Great. Perfect.
Look, let's throw some bail to Shanahan. The play would have worked if it was executed properly, right?
Yes, but that's a frustrating thing this year, Sunil, is many of those plays are not working. And at some point, it's got to be on Kyle to either get the S back in the horse, right? I don't want to drop any curse words here, but to put it back in the horse or to stop calling the plays. Like either you got to be able to coach up your team to execute those plays, or you got to pull them out of the damn playbook because they are killing momentum. I mean, we were up until that play moving the ball pretty well, even though we had stalled on a previous drive. And then after that felt very disjointed. I don't know that it had anything to do with that play, but it certainly set up a poor down and distance immediately after failing to connect.
So I was very pleased with the running back core, specifically Trey Sermon. And I'm kind of projecting forward. I mean, he was averaging 4.7 yards per carry. To me, that's really, really good, right? That's something that Mostert did, like, all that 2019 season where he really broke out was, up in those high fours as far as average. And, Breida was up there too. I'm really excited about seeing that from Sermon because I know at a certain point Elijah Mitchell's coming back. And I think that 1-2 punch of Mitchell and Sermon is going to be right what we need it to be. And that is something to look forward to in a very bleak situation with this 49ers offense. So to see that, to see that we're going to have two viable running backs that can get the job done, to me, makes my heart flutter like a butterfly. All right. So to me, Trey Sermon gets an A because of what he was able to do. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't just him. I think Juszczyk wasn't utilized properly, and the opportunities he got weren't, didn't get the kind of pop that he got the week before. Obviously, Jaquez coming in, making that error, didn't make a big impact either. So I would have to give it more of a B as well, because obviously it wasn't all Trey Sermon. However, that B, I think, will turn into A's very soon here when Mitchell comes back, and it's Mitchell and Sermon rotating in the backfield. I think those are two excellent running backs. And for a rookie class that is being maligned by a lot of the faithful right now, I think they got it right at running back.
I sure hope so, because that could be a deadly 1-2 punch.
Now let's go to the people in front of that 1-2 punch, the offensive line. And I am interested to see how you graded this because I think we might be a little bit different on this. So go ahead and tell us how you graded this offensive line.
Yeah, I thought that they, again, did all right. I thought that they blocked in the pass rush reasonably well. I think we allowed, 2 sacks in the game? A couple of quarterback hits, that's for sure. And then blocked well in the run game. So I thought did really well in run blocking, okay in pass protection, but I'm still concerned with this unit. And it's the most concerning area that I thought we had addressed in the offseason, and that's interior line play. If you have Mac matched up one-on-one in pass protection, it seems like a loss in that scenario. And a lot of the interior pressure is coming from that right side, either Mac, Brunskill, or some combination of Mac and Brunskill together. So because of that, I had to bring it down some. I don't think that the 49ers offense, as it's currently set up with Jimmy G, is set to handle interior pressure. You saw what it did to us in the Super Bowl. You see what it does to us anytime you have a dominant nose tackle playing. It happened again in Green Bay. And I thought that Seattle, even though they don't have a premier nose tackle, was still able to take advantage there. And that's concerning to me because a lot of the good teams we will go up against do have premier players in there. So I had to bring it down to a B there for this group.
This group doesn't pass for me. And the reason for it is something that hurts my soul because I thought we had a solution and it's turning into a really big problem, Rob. And I'm surprised you aren't talking about it. Alex Mack is not good. The amount of times that Jimmy G and then in the second half, Trey Lance had to adjust to the snap because it was thrown too high, it was thrown too low, it was thrown to the side. And these guys are looking like receivers out there with the one-handed snatches and, being able to – and think about in a timing offense like this 49ers offense, having to adjust to the play, that half second, 1 second, when Jimmy is known to throw the ball out of his hands. When he gets it, less than 2.5 seconds, that ball's out. Well, there's a half second gone just adjusting to where that snap is. And that is affecting what this offense can do. It's funny because they were showing highlights of Trey Sermon, and all I was seeing was Alex Mack with the hand just getting manhandled. That was what I was focused on versus what was happening positive with the offense. Alex Mack is not good. Darren Brunskill is not good. I don't know what Mike McGlinchey is doing. There's one person and one person only that is making this offensive line look somewhat decent, and that's Trent Williamson. And oh, by the way, he's hurt.
He's hurt.
Laken Tomlinson is quietly having a terrible season. And this run game, I think, is more Juszczyk and Kittle than this offensive line, because you can't run down the middle. They're running behind Juszczyk. When they're behind Trent, you're seeing pancakes and this guy just running down the field when they could run towards the left, but the inside and the right side doesn't seem to be having the success. The fact that there was any sacks from the Seattle defense that has nobody on it, really, as far as pass rushing, none of these sacks were from Jamal Adams, who's the person that usually gets sacked. Carlos Dunlop, their best rusher, was injured in and out of the lineup and all that kind of stuff during the game. The fact that this defense even had a chance, I think, is because of that offensive line. So for me, they're a C-. They're not passing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that too much. Although a C- as a star student in high school, that would technically be passing. I mean, I got to throw it out there that would be passing. But I mean, I can't fault you for the anger on the interior section of the line. I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And now that you call out the shotgun snaps from Mac, I would agree that they do seem to be erratic. I haven't been paying attention to it with the level of detail I would need to in order to say that it's a continual issue. But the simple fact that I can simply recall a few errant snaps without having to think very hard says something to how frequently that's happening. And I would agree that what you're getting out of Kittle and Juszczyk as far as run blocking exceeds what you're getting out of the center of the line. I tend to disagree on Tomlinson. I feel that he is a polarizing figure, but I tend to see him as a fairly stable force there. I think the problems with Mack and Daniel Brunskill, to me, that's where the problem resides. But regardless, if 2/5 of your line is an issue, it really doesn't matter what the rest of the line is doing, because that's a giant gaping hole.
Yeah, and Harold Murillo puts up, it's hard for Kittle and Juice to have good days in receiving. They're usually helping out with blocking. Offensive line is D. So he even has it lower than us. And Harold, I think I'm more lean towards you. If C- is still passing, they get a D, because they are a failing offensive line. I'm right with you, Harold. And look, he brings up a really good point. We're not able to see a full offensive George Kittle and a full offensive Juszczyk, because they're having to make up for something that isn't typically their job. And that is a weakness in the the offensive line that needs to be changed, because I would much rather have George Kittle out pass catching than him being as a blocker every single down.
I would agree wholeheartedly.
So let's move on to the signal caller, the guys throwing the balls, the quarterbacks. And I say quarterbacks because both played. So let's see how you feel about that, Rob.
Yeah, so I didn't grade them separately because, quite honestly, I didn't know what to make of either one of their performances. Both of them had really great-looking plays at times, and then terrible moments for others. So for Jimmy, started out like gangbusters. I mean, what was he, 6 for 6, 7 for 7, whatever he started the game with, that he was on pace, getting the ball out, looked sharp, looked in command. And then whatever it was, whether it was the offense getting thrown off schedule, whether it was the calf injury that occurred, although it's hard to really place. I know we've seen which play that happens on, but it's hard to place how it affects him because he makes some plays that seem as if he's still feeling okay after that, and then other throws or moving around where it seems to be hindered. So he was all over the map within the first half. And then Trey comes in and sort of suffers from the opposite syndrome, which was looked atrocious to start. That throw at Kittle's feet was just sort of
not good.
Yeah, cringeworthy.
Yes.
But you understand that it was nerves, and it makes more sense when you hear the story of, well, it was basically a minute or two before the end of halftime that they really learned Jimmy couldn't go and then told Trey, and that's tough. I mean, you're a rookie to begin with. The game plan wasn't centered around you. You prepared as if you were the backup all week, and then you get thrown in 60 seconds before you need to be on the field performing. So that is a tough ask. That said, it still looked bad, and then it didn't get that much better. It was good at times, but his biggest play was a busted coverage. Mm-hmm. The last drive, it did feel as if he was getting his rhythm, but then you have to ask the question, is that garbage time? Was Seattle already in a looser prevent style of defense that was allowing for those completions to take place?
But let's be honest, Rob. That's the only time Jimmy usually looks good too. He obviously had the first drive in this game, but in most of the times it's the last 2 minutes of the second half, last 2 minutes of or 2 to 4 minutes of the first half and the second half is when he tends to look good. So It is on these softer coverage type defenses that are more in that prevent mindset versus let's go stop these guys type of thing.
Yeah. And that's a systemic issue when it is happening across both of the quarterbacks. And it makes you wonder if it isn't an offensive issue, if it isn't a Kyle Shanahan issue, if it isn't a cohesion of the offensive line issue. Because if you're seeing the same trends where they're able to pick it up at these points, that's what's so frustrating to me is the potential is there, Sunil. The players are there. The talent is there. You see flashes of what it could be, and then you see the garbage that is actually there at the end of the game and then the end result. So for me, it's hard to attribute significant blame to this group, but I also don't give them all that much credit. So in this instance, this was one of my lower, if not the lowest offensive grades. I gave them a C.
Yeah. I'm giving them a C-. And the reason for that is primarily Jimmy, and in that first half, the defense did everything to set them up to put Seattle away in that first half, and Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't get the job done, and it obviously left Russ with the ability to stay in the game, and if you give Russ enough opportunities, eventually he's going to break through.
Yes, and he will.
You put the numbers up in the beginning of this stream. It wasn't like Seattle had that big of an offensive day.
Not at all.
With the type of receivers that they have, and obviously the quarterback that they have, to only be in the low 200s or whatever the number was that you put, that's a win for the defense in my books. You would think that that's a win for the 49ers if you can hold that offense to what you held. The reason why there was 28 points on the board was obviously some special teams issues, but Jimmy threw that pick as well that should have been a drive down the field for a touchdown, and that's what I'm really judging this based off of is the quarterback play needs to be better, especially with the defense playing the way that they're playing. You talk about all these weapons that they have and the flashes and all this kind of stuff. Nothing happens if the person throwing the ball cannot get to where they need to get to. And so for me, it's a C-. I mean, I guess that's a pass on a curve. They aren't passing, but we need better quarterback play. Look, we thought that, hey, we get healthy, competent quarterback play, we're going to be a team that could win consistently. We have the healthy players. We're not getting competent quarterback play. And still it's showing that we're losing games because of it.
Hard to argue with that.